for two. Kickers are extra, I give them the boot. Ooh, going for two. Sit back, relax while I grab me a brew. Ooh, now I'm reclining while putting my time and I'm ready to go. My spine is aligning and much my lineups, my bank account grow. I am so rich, but knowledge is all that I'm leaving it with. Ooh, listen to this, multiple options, how far can I get? Ooh, DFS Dynasty redraft tonight, I'm not finishing last. I'm finishing past any and all, I am looking to last. What else? This spot is popping and I am so locked in and only opening the door when it is opportunity knocking. And all of these spots keep on talking and talking. So what are we talking? What kind of alignment? And running it deep, even players forgotten or came from the bottom or hitting that top. And this spot is popping, yeah, this spot is popping. And woo! This is the armchair, yeah. Put up your arms, yeah. Sound the alarm, yeah, yeah, yeah. Woo!
What is going on, guys, and welcome to the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Personal League Podcast. We are here, of course, to break down your 10-team league. For those that are listening that may not be in this league, if you want to get one of these PLPs for yourself, visit goingfor2.com/PLP. We break down every team. We rank them from worst to first, and we're going to do that tonight with the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. But first, let's meet the panel. Up first, we got Mr. Kyle. He is the host of the Press Coverage Podcast and co-host of the Dynasty Gambit on the Going for Two Live Network. You can follow him on Twitter at SenraSays. What's up, Kyle?
Hey, everyone. Glad to be doing another Personal League podcast. These PLPs are the perfect way to spend a Friday night.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Next up, we have Mr. Shane, host of the Red Zone Redemption Show and founder of Polly's Pockets Charity Fantasy Leagues. You could follow him on Twitter at FFShaneB. What's up, Shane?
You know, I was having a good night until you called my fantasy tournament Polly's Pockets.
I did it before the show too, and it just comes off my lips. I have a 10-year-old, so
I understand. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys. And it's Polly's Playoff, which you can sign up and donate at pollysplayoff.com.
Yes.
Alliterations are awesome.
Yes.
After all.
Absolutely. And last but not least, we have Zach. He's a writer over at goingfor2.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at BehindTheZach. What's up, Zach?
What's up? Thanks for having me. Glad to be back. Glad to be doing another PLP as always.
Good stuff. All right. As I mentioned, guys, we're going to be breaking down this 10-team league. We'll start from 10 to 1. I've assigned these three gentlemen a couple different teams in the league. And when we get to that team in the ranking, they will break down your team, give you strengths, weaknesses, maybe some trade ideas. Whatever they want to talk about. So let's go ahead and get into the top ones here. Let's go.
Number 10.
All right. The number 10 league was ranked as high as number 3 and as low as number 10. And Kyle, this is your team. It is Big Brobs.
Well, you said it all. But, a massive disparity between 3 and 10. I would say before it gets started, I think this has been, this is the third year we've been doing PLPs. I've never had a more difficult time starting the ranking process because I usually go, when I'm looking at the teams in the league, the obvious things are who are the best couple of teams and who are the worst couple of teams. And I really could not do that off the bat. I almost have to do the opposite, start from the middle and work my way out. So that's kind of a kudos to all 10 managers in this league. This seems incredibly balanced. It saddens me to put the team with Jonathan Taylor at number 10 because I was one of the managers or experts, one of the people on the show who ranked them at number 10. But yes, a super flex league with Jalen Hurts, who might be a top 3 quarterback in Dynasty right now. It's strange to put that team 10, but it just kind of speaks to the depth of the league. And I think that the main thing here is kind of elite assets, certainly Hurts, Taylor, Stephon Diggs, but I think there's several spots in the starting lineup I feel like they're probably the weakest at throughout the whole league, specifically QB2, I would argue wide receiver 2, and then tight end. And I think that's kind of, also, I guess depth is not the problem on this team. It really does feel like missing starters relative to some of the other elite teams. So because they have so much running back depth, I think that might be the place to kind of pay from in order to make those upgrades. I guess the one thing I'll say about them is, Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett, they're kind of handcuffing the QB2. I've talked about in the PLPs before. I don't love handcuffing running backs. I think if I'm going to handcuff a position now, I think it's quarterback. Honestly, that's the one where If I've got someone who may not be so solid as a starter, or I've isolated myself and I'm thin at quarterback, give me their backups in case they get hurt. So I like that in theory. I feel like I would like that in theory more if that tandem was the QB3 and there was a better QB2. So maybe it comes to selling Sam Howell and adding one of those depth running backs to get a more solid like top 20 quarterback perhaps. So I mean, I think that's that those are kind of the moves I would try and make, is really focus. I mean, not to say you should always focus on the starting lineup this early in the year, but it feels like I guess the move up for this team isn't so much to acquire depth. It really is to make some of those big splashy plays, to use some of that depth, some 2-for-1s, sell a couple assets to get a better asset. Again, I would target quarterbacks, wide receivers, and maybe a tight end upgrade as well. I would say not to pay for a non-elite tight end upgrade, but there might be also, that might be the cheapest way to acquire someone who might be viewed as an upgrade if it's not too expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right about ranking these teams. Like usually when I look at a Superflex league, the first thing I do is check out all the quarterbacks. And this guy's got Jalen Hurts, right? So, I mean, that's really tough to rank him last. You got Jonathan Taylor, two guys that could finish at the top of their, positional group. And then you got guys like Diggs and even Ridley, Cole Kmet, I really like this year. So putting him at 10 really doesn't do him justice on this team and the potential that it does actually have with a couple of moves like you mentioned.
My issue. Or go ahead, Kyle. Sorry.
Just one quick thing. They're one of only 2 teams without a first-round pick next year as well. So also less ammunition relative to others. And we do rank them based on how we would like to take them over.
Yep. Yeah, it's not worst to first. It's how we would want to take them over. Shane, you had them ranked at 3. You were the highest on this team. So I'm curious to your thoughts and why you liked it so much.
Well, I mean, you literally just explained it, Jeff. It's how we would rank them and how we want to take them over. And this team has some of my favorite players. I love Calvin Ridley. I think he's going to have a really nice bounce back here. Cole Kmet, I was a little annoyed a couple years ago when I was left out of the Cole Kmet club. And then I really believe in Jahan Dotson and Sam Howell. I actually recorded my show last night and talked about how I think Sam Howell has a lot of potential to break out this year, because he, from his sophomore year to his junior year in college at North Carolina, he lost 4 NFL players off of his offense, and only one of them was supplemented, and that was Josh Downs being his wide receiver 1. His passing numbers stayed relatively the same, and he actually upped his rushing numbers in his final year at North Carolina. So I really believe that Sam Howell has the opportunity to surprise a lot of people. So I'm fine with Sam Howell. And then down on the bench, I'm a Kyron Williams fan. I don't know if I should really admit that because I don't know. He's just not doing so hot. But Tank Bigsby, I feel like has the potential to be what I call a hyper handcuff, where he's almost got the ability to have flex value standalone, even though he's technically the RB2 on his team. And some people, not me, think he can take ETN over for the RB1 in Jacksonville. I don't, but that's because I also love ETN. So that was just a couple of things that are like, I really love this team and would be perfectly fine taking it over.
I would say Kyron Williams is probably the only Rams running back with the receiving profile, as much as I love Cam Akers. But and I think you touched on a big difference between us. I'm not so big a believer in Ridley, and I'm not so big a believer in Howell. So if Big Bravs is, they're probably not so worried about our rankings. But I keep interrupting Zach, so go ahead, Zach. Sorry.
I like Ridley. I see the value in having him there. My issue is I love about 2/3 of the starting lineup. But to complete the rest of that starting lineup, to get it to where I want to be, I essentially have to gut that bench. All the assets that I think are worth something, that are guys I value in fantasy that are on his bench, there's a few of them that I like. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson, John Mechie, Jalen Hyatt, I like some of those pieces, Tank as well. But I'm going to have to use a lot of those guys to get a quarterback that's worth anything. Because to me, Sam Howell's kind of a fun option for this year with upside. He's one of those where, I would use the reference of, throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. That's kind of how I view Sam Howell. You know, it's a cheap asset where it's worth finding out, because if he is worth anything, you're easily, you know, gaining in regards to returns. But you know, lower those expectations as well. And that's where, you know, I'd be nervous not having my first, because a lot of the other teams have that second QB, and, you know, you're probably going to regret not having that first rounder.
Yeah, the issues that I have, you know, just going on to Sam Howell. I actually live in the Washington D.C. area, so I know that they like him a lot. But he handcuffed the quarterback with Jacoby Brissett, who's a solid, you know, backup. If Howell does falter, he's safe in that manner. But then the fact that you've got 3 Washington Commanders in your lineup here with Robinson, Dotson, and Howell.
Yeah.
That's a little tough. They're not expected to be a very good offense this year. Better, but not a good offense. So I'm not sure if I'm married to having those 3 guys.
Well, and I think, does that make Jeff, sorry to step over you again, Zach, but
you're good.
What Jeff's saying about having too much Washington, does that make Brian Robinson the perfect sell on this team? Because he is a running back that has value. And because you maintain the Sam Howell, Jacoby Brissett handcuff duo and the stack to Dotson. So that correlates, but maybe having Brian Robinson, who's not much of a pass catching running back, doesn't correlate. And again, I would say running back's probably his strongest position. So he can afford, like, go to some of the teams that are thinner at running back, target them. And that's how you get that wide receiver too. Maybe that's, you know, you package him with one of the tight ends. Maybe you put Robinson and Cole Kmet to go after a top 6 tight end. That would probably be how I would approach a trade.
Yeah,
and I get it, George Kittle, who's maybe getting older and dipping in value.
Absolutely. And you use my favorite word. It's a DFS word, correlate. You have to think.
It is a Friday night on the Going for Two Live Network, after all.
Absolutely. So yeah, the Howell and Dotson combination is great if, you know, the Commanders are down by a lot, trying to catch up, throw the ball over the field. But the problem is Brian Robinson's not doing anything in that. He's not catching passes, so he gets hurt by that. And then you get a game where they're leading by a lot. Robinson's getting a ton of touches, but then maybe Dotson's not doing as much, and neither is Howell. So correlating them so that you can get both players being used in the offense is something I would try to do as well.
Again, whether that's Howell or Jacoby Brissett. Sorry, I just had to say it one time because the Cleveland connoisseur walked in the live room, and he had to hear the name Jacoby Brissett at least twice. Now he has. We can move on, I think.
All right, let's get to team number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9 team ranked as high as number 4, as low as number 9. It is Any Given Sunday. And Zach, this is your squad.
I had this team as my 7th ranked. You know, I was right in the middle there. Wasn't too high, wasn't too low. It really is a testament to this league as well, because, you know, that 10 spot also wasn't a team I disliked. You know, we've all seen those orphans of rosters you don't want to take over at all. All of these, you know, I think we'd probably be content with comparatively to some teams we see, right? But with that in mind, Any Given Sunday, I love this roster relative to being where it's at. You know, the 9 spot, this isn't too bad. But my concern, again, is the quarterback. It comes down to that every time. Tua off the bat, you know, we have the concussion concerns, obviously. You know, it's a scary situation last year. We don't really know what that is going forward. He proved himself. I think the talent we know is there, but we can't trust the health. However, in regards to the rest of the quarterbacks, Jimmy G, worth a flyer. Same thing with Baker. Some of those guys, yeah, there's some fun, you know, shots in the dark, but there's no real expectations there. And my other big concern as well is this running back room. It is one that, you know, I'm sure a lot of people would have loved to have maybe 2-3 years ago. But as of right now, you're not really going to get much value if you try and trade off of those guys. So you're either going to have to ride them into the ground or, you know, really just not get a return that you would like. Thoughts on those running backs before I go any further?
Well, we don't have to have many thoughts. There's only 5 on the entire roster, and one of them is Javonte Williams. Who knows? I mean, being told he's going to start week 1, but coming off the torn ACL, Alvin Kamara with the suspension, like, there's barely any running back depth on this team. Honestly, why did I rank? Because I'm the one who put them at 9, so I'm the one that was kind of dragging them down. And to Big Brab's credit, like, I almost put this team 10. So,
the only reason why I couldn't was this wide receiver core. There are so many top-end receivers where you could get other assets, but it's one of those teams where you're signing up for a lot of work off the bat just with where you're at right now. I mean, those running backs, yikes, that's brutal. Because if Derek regresses at all, if Miles isn't the same in Carolina, suddenly you're hoping Alvin's not suspended, and you're hoping that Javonte fully recovers. But still, then you better hope Jimmy G and Baker can produce as your QB too. But yeah, those wide receivers, it's disgusting. I mean, Mike Evans, Ayuk, Odell, Thielen, Reed, Shakir, Sky Moore, Zay Flowers. Yeah, I think his worst one is Khalil Shakir, and that's a great stash guy. I think comparatively to a lot of these other wide receiver cores, you're in a great spot there. I think my question is, how do you use those assets to benefit your team and set yourself up for success going forward? At tight end, same thing. I love this core. George Kittle right now, an immediate producer. And I love Laporta and Jelani Woods on the bench. You have young depth there, guys who I think have high-end potential, but, relatively high floors as well from what we've seen so far with someone like Jelani Woods. My big question, though, is just who can he target quarterback-wise? I'm looking at a few of the teams. I look at Team 330 where they have a whole bunch of young quarterbacks on the bench. Same thing goes for, I believe it was All About TDs. They have a few young guys stashed as well. But, I'm looking at some of these guys that have 4 QBs and 2 of them that, they can really just let sit on the bench. Try and overpay for one of those because you really could benefit from a second quarterback. And that's where I'm going immediately with how many wide receivers you have. Obviously, you don't want to lose those guys. I'm assuming you put some work in to get the guys that you valued more. But you got to start trying to make moves at those other positions. Thoughts?
Well, Zach, to that, you probably the move you said it is to get the best quarterback possible. You're probably gonna have to give up Tua. What are you adding to Tua? I mean, Jalen Waddle in some rankings and some experts' opinions, not mine certainly, but is kind of as high as the wide receiver 3 at times. Is one of the 9 other managers in the league, maybe not quite that high, but super high on Waddle that they view him as a top 5 receiver. Can you sell them on the Tua Waddle stack as a way to get that top 9 quarterback?
What my whole thought was just kind of, it's a weird in-between team right now, but I like so many of these young assets where I would just be tempted to blow the damn thing up and sell any guy that's over, a certain age point. If this was my roster, I'd be looking at selling Derek, Miles, Alvin for anything right now because I wouldn't feel that I could necessarily turn into an elite contender right now just by a trade or two. And with that in mind, I think it'd be easier to go the other way. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to say, we said it at the beginning, but I want to say it one more time because I see Godstrike in the chat. This must be his team because he has a WTF because he's ranked at number 9. But we've done a lot of these PLPs, and it's almost always where there's like 3 teams you can tell are in full-blown rebuild mode. They have no chance of winning the championship game. We're ranking these teams based on what your league looks like, and we don't typically see guys like Cooper Kupp, CeeDee Lamb, George Kittle, Jalen Waddle on the 9th team or the 10th team in the league. It's just, this league is very well balanced, and somebody had to be towards the end. And I think really any of these teams with a couple moves here and there have a chance to compete for a championship. And just being in the chat for the last week or so that I was, this is a high stakes league too. So that might have to do with it. You don't want to go into a rebuild mode with the entry fees that they have to pay to get into it. So that's why they're all trying to compete.
I think that's where I look at some of these rosters that where, if you can eat it for 1 year, this is a team where I think if you're patient for one rough go around, you can really turn it around quickly just based off the amount of assets that are there. There's just so many guys that are depreciating right now. I mean, I don't know. It's tough to really want to tell someone, hey, you should hold on to Derrick Henry, Miles Sanders, Alvin Kamara, Cooper Kupp, and Tyler Lockett. That's a lot of aging dudes that are only going down in price.
Yeah, good point. All right, let's get to team number 8.
Number 8.
Number 8 team ranked as high as 6 and as low as number 9. And this, I don't know what this is supposed to stand for, but W Mancino. I guess that's how we say it. You're the number 8 team, and Shane, this is your team.
Yeah, so, all right. I like your running back duo of Eckler and Gibbs. And your wide receiver room is decent with A.J. Brown leading that and then Deebo Samuel. But I'm kind of labeling your team as a buy low team because Deebo Samuel's not coming off as a strong of year. Mike Williams has dealt with injuries throughout his career and can't ever put together a 1,000-yard season and a 10-touchdown season. I don't know why. Pisses me off, but we're calling him a buy low. Same with Cortland Sutton and that Russell Wilson stack. Like, we all know how bad Denver's offense was last year. And then Gabe Davis, the hype has fallen off the face of the planet, which I'm kind of glad because last offseason it was absolutely stupid. And then so I had you ranked 9th, and I think the reason for that is outside of your starting lineup, I don't love a ton of the depth that you have. I do like Michael Gallup on your bench. Elijah Moore's got some opportunity in Cleveland to be the number 2. And I love Josh Downs. And that's about, and then Kendre Miller. But then that's about it. And you have Devontae Parker, and Devontae Parker is a piece of shit. So that is my assessment for you.
That's what y'all paid for here. A groundbreaking analysis. Piece of shit. That's what Shane's got for you. I like it. Kyle, let me go to you on this team here because I think you had him 7, a little bit higher than Shane did. What are your thoughts on this team?
Yeah, pretty good assessment. I think the starting lineup looks pretty good, but yeah, maybe the depth is where there's some. I mean, anyone who's listened to enough of these PLPs, most of the time there's not ever enough running back depth. Half the roster could be running backs. It's probably afford a couple more. So I guess it's weird to rank a team with Josh Allen and Austin Eckler. Like both have the potential to be number 1 at their positions in fantasy, and we're ranking them at 8. But again, they're just
Kyle. That's what, we've said it throughout the show. Like this league is so balanced, and that's kind of, like after I was going through the ranks, I was like, I've got to push somebody down. Unfortunately, it was just this team based on who I would prefer to take over, but it's still a good team.
Absolutely, yeah. Like it's crazy to me that seeing this like Josh Allen, Austin Eckler, AJ Brown. I mean, that's a pretty good combination of players right there. Definitely studs, and we got this team ranked at 8th.
And I just saw Ryan Clark's comment. Yes, Zach said aging. He doesn't like all the aging players.
Yeah, not Asian.
Not Asian. Said Asian too.
That was.
I think his wife is Asian.
All right. Anything else on this team before we move to number 7? All right, let's do it.
Number 7.
Number 7 team, pretty big disparity here. We got ranked as high as 4 and as low as 9, and it is Sick Puppy. And Kyle, this is your team.
Yeah. So again, massive disparities in our rankings is showing how deep this league is. Honestly, we've had a couple leagues before where it's okay. This is kind of tough, but like this will forever be the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the League of Extraordinary Balance, as like this. We'll reference this in future PLP episodes. Okay, it's kind of a deep league, but it's not that Extraordinary Gentleman League deep.
Right.
So good balance, guys. I had them at number 4, so I was definitely on the higher side here. And I think I love this roster construction. This, like, to me, this is closer to what I view as kind of ideal running back depth. They've got, an elite quarterback in Justin Herbert. They've got, who I still have as the dynasty tight end 1 in Travis Kelce. So yeah, get the elite options. And then, deep at running back. Maybe I don't love the RB1 on the team. It's tough to even identify who that is, but the roster only has, I think is it 8 or 9 wide receivers total? And yeah, I think it's 9 receivers total. And honestly, other than maybe KJ Osborne, all these guys are ranked in like close to top 40, top 50. And like, there's no roster clogger receivers at all. Cause that's one of the first things I'll usually look at this type of league. Where are, I guess, slight tight end premium. So maybe the position that could take up spots is wide receiver. You don't need wide receiver depth as much, but if you've got high end wide receiver depth, like this team, that's kind of like where I think you want to have your construction in, is that really like you look at the top 5 in the lineup. If Hopkins can return to prominence, whatever team he ends up on, having Keenan Allen, Devontae Smith, Amon-Ra, and Tyreek as kind of like every week starters, and Kelce, that's a lot of catches. And like, those are the receivers you want to target. And they get enough depth at running back. There's a lot of young guys, a lot of guys that are still on rookie contracts as well. I guess really Dalvin Cook's the only like second contract running back on this team. Maybe could still use running back depth. I think there's one empty roster spot, or at least there's one team with more roster spots than them, and just add a running back. But yeah, I love more than anything the roster construction for this team. I think if there's any move to make, it is upgrade at RB1. Maybe, I guess my suggestion is rostering 4 tight ends with Travis Kelce. I think you can afford to go even like
shallower,
even more sparse.
Yeah.
Like you can afford to trade one of those guys away. Like I think Evan Ingram, I think in my rankings, I think he's tight end 8, maybe tight end 9. After the year he had last year, I think I'd be willing to shop Evan Ingram with either Dalvin Cook or maybe Pacheco and try and upgrade at RB1. That would be probably the move I would look to make if I was this manager.
Yeah, sometimes too, me and Brian on our weekly show on Wednesday talk about this with tight ends. Like in the offseason, we always think, oh, tight end is so deep, and these just guys down here that are going to be great tight ends, and they're athletic and this and that. Then you get into the season and realize, nope, there's the top 3 or top 4, and that's it. So if you have one of those guys like Evan Ingram potentially, could end up like that, you trade those guys in season. When the teams that thought they had this deep tight end was going to be an athletic guy breakout, he realizes that he's not that tight end, that he needs a tight end. He may come to you, get the Evan Ingram, so you can get a ton of value for him, a player like Evan Ingram. So yeah, I like that trading with tight ends.
And if you're going to target running backs, yeah, maybe this is the best time of year to do it, right? Like in season that's a good point, Jeff.
Yeah. All right. Anything else before we get to team number 6? All right, let's do it.
Number 6.
Number 6 team, another big disparity. We have as high as number 2 and as low as number 8. And it is all about TDs. And Zach, this is your squad.
As the person who had them number 2, I'm glad I could be the one that's reviewing this team because I feel disrespected for them that you guys don't have them higher. 8 by 2 of you. I think we need to have a little bit of a talk. And Shane, should you get another beer? The answer is yes. But in regards to the quarterbacks here, there's not really that high-end elite quarterback level. However, I think you're going to get some good production from Aaron this year, and I love that you have someone like Anthony Richardson and Will Levis. You have both of them where you can just leave them on the bench, see what happens year one with no real expectations. You have that veteran production right now. I also think Daniel Jones is relatively underappreciated. He kind of had his breakout year last year. I don't think the expectations should be necessarily too high with him as your quarterback. However, I think he's a guy that can be very consistent for you week after week and, finish in that QB 10 to QB 15 range. With that in mind, the running backs are a big part of what I liked about this. There's youth, there's pre-existing production, someone like, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, James Conner. You've got those veterans there, but someone like Roschon Johnson, I think he'll have the starting running back role by the end of the year in Chicago. So I really like him there. Same thing goes for the wide receivers and tight end. I mean, just youth all the way around. I like this wide receiver core, Terry McLaurin, along with Pittman, Brown, Burks. Yeah, it's great. I love just how many different areas of tiered weaponry you have. And yeah, I mean, I'm surprised. Please tell me what I'm missing out on. He even has 2 firsts this year. Like, why were you guys so low? I mean, I don't see it.
So I had him at 5, and honestly, this is kind of how I like to build my rosters. Is he's got a very good mix of older guys and younger players, and basically direct replacements for, like you mentioned, the 2 quarterbacks. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers maybe has 1-2 years left, but then he's going to have Richardson or Levis, kind of step into that role. Hopefully, he's got some other guys on his team that are getting up there in age, but he has the backups to fill in for those roles. So it's a very nice roster build as far as the aging guys and the younger players as well.
So can I jump in here, Jeff?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Okay, so I would actually like to apologize to this team as well. I missed that you had Levis and Richardson on your bench from a QB standpoint and was just glaringly staring at Daniel Jones as your QB1 and was like, oh, shit. So that is why I ranked you at 8. I think so. I'm going to apologize there. I do like your running backs and your starting lineup wide receivers are great. My biggest concern is there are a lot of question marks simply based on youth in your wide receiver depth. Like they're all guys that are either rookies or are unproven year 1 or 2 guys. And that's my biggest concern with the roster. But because I missed Levis and Richardson, I would probably end up bumping this team up 1 or 2 spots if I had to be honest.
Yeah.
I think, to me, the presence of Richardson was why they weren't 9 or even 10. Like that's what prevented them from being last to me. I do love Bijan. Now I'm about as anti Kyle Pitts as possible. And I think having both of them on the same team, I really don't like. So yeah. I think my first move, just because it's a slight tight end premium, but I think it's only the extra 0.25, right? Or did I read that wrong? Yeah, it's only 0.25. That's like, I barely consider that a tight end premium. I'll be honest. Like even 1.5 is not that much of a difference maker, but if it's viewed like every PLP I'm on, I say sell Kyle Pitts, because to me, he's the perfect guy to always sell because his market value is far superior to what his production value. We can maybe it jumps, but like I don't know. I don't expect he's ever going to be like the tight end one, like how Kelsey is by a mile. If someone in your league is still believing, they might be willing to have top price. But I guess that's part of my reasoning there is there's so it's
to jump in as well though with the bench wide receivers. Yeah, I understand it's a lot of unproven guys, but there's a lot of upside that you can sell people on. Right
Definitely,
there. I think comparatively to some other rosters, I look at a lot of these names, the Kadarius Toney, the Romeo Doubs, the Pukas, where you really just have to find the right suitor, someone that actually does believe in that guy, and I think you'll be able to get a relatively good return, or piece a couple of them together to get something that's more beneficial to what you need right now, which could be more of a veteran player. Like what was the roster again with Mike Evans on the bench? Who was that again?
That was Any Given Sunday, wasn't it?
I believe so. Any Given Sunday. Yeah, like that's exactly what I'd be going to. They have, someone like Brandon Ayuk maybe, but Adam Thielen,
Zach,
he could be a cheaper option.
You.
What?
It's Brandon Ayuk.
I don't care.
I'm just helping you out.
I thought we were past Ayuk, we wouldn't have to deal with it, but yeah, it keeps coming up. Any Given Sunday, his name could be mentioned.
Don't really care.
Or Friday.
Zach, the only it's not even a counterpoint. It's not even like a detriment to this team, the youth of wide receiver. But I absolutely love the point that you just brought up. Like, use that to your advantage of the unknown. Be like Elsa and figure out what's going into the unknown and go find a trade partner who needs youth at wide receiver and capitalize on that. So I like that a lot. It's more of it's not even like I said, it's not a detriment. It's just a concern of mine.
You can sell people on potential and upside. You can't sell people on a depreciating asset because people always love to bring up age. The moment you're trying to sell a veteran 100%. Guy, he's 31 or 30. It's like, what? He doesn't know how to catch a damn ball anymore?
Yeah.
No, that's not how it works. But, you can sell that premium there. So, yeah.
8 straight years of 1,000 yards.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I noticed, and I wanted to bring it up at this point here, is I don't know how old this league has been, but one thing I have noticed is most of the teams own all of their own draft picks. So there hasn't been a ton of draft pick trades, it doesn't look like. So I'm curious if one of the guys in the chat can answer this question, but how long has this league been going on? Because typically we see rosters of dynasty rosters where they don't own any of their picks. They own other teams' picks, and that's about it.
And that's where, when I was looking at all the rosters, this is the only team with 4 first-round picks across all 3 of the years. So that's where them having 2 this year, along with each of their, or at least 1 person in each of the next 2, really like that.
And
Godstrike just answered, it's the first year, so that makes a lot of sense.
Godstrike also mentioned earlier that this was an auction draft, which I thought was pretty cool. They just started this. So I guess I wonder if any. Yeah,
I would say that's probably why.
I would say I'm usually a proponent of the couple of teams that maybe sold their first during the auction. I'm usually a proponent of doing that, but I also trust my ability in an auction that like I'll give 15% of my budget if I can get a first and a second future, and with 85% of my budget, I think I can draft as good a team as anyone else.
Yeah, that's a good call, and I'm hoping that these guys like this PLP and continue to purchase them year after year, because I want to see how this league, because the first year is always hard to tell because you teams are all pretty balanced. I want to see this league in 2 or 3 years and see how the division ends up being from these teams, because I think it'll change dramatically in a couple years.
Okay,
all right, we ready to move on to Team 5?
Let's do it.
Number 5.
All right, number 5 team was ranked as high as number 1 and as low as number 7, and it is Team 330. And Shane, this is your squad.
Okay. Looking at this team again, I may have ranked them too low on the basis of a team that I would like to take over. First thing, why the hell do you have 7 quarterbacks? Now, I get that it's super flex and quarterbacks are like gold, but 7 still seems excessive. So that would probably be my first thing. And the first person I'm selling is Kenny Pickett. And the second person I'm selling is Trey Lance. That's just me personally. I've never been a big fan of either of them. And I think both of them have hype that you could potentially capitalize on to go strengthen. And I think the one position that I would strengthen the most is probably just your running back or wide receiver depth. But I really, really like this team. You've got a Joe Burrow and T. Higgins stack, and T. Higgins is one of my favorite receivers in the league. You've got Kenneth Walker as your RB3, maybe your RB2, depending on if you're feeling fancy. And this is where Kyle and I agree on the basis of having a shit ton of running backs. Where we disagree is like having the handcuffs for you. But if I'm reading your roster right, you've got Ken Walker and you got Zach Charbonnet. And I personally love that because if one of them goes down, I think both of them are talented enough to handle a full workload.
And they're both clearly more talented than anyone else on that team. Like DJ Dallas isn't coming in.
Yes, like good God, like I cut DJ Dallas off so many rosters. It's stupid.
I actually think it's the one position you didn't name. I would try and upgrade David Njoku. Throw Njoku and Trey Lance. Can I go get a Kelsey? Can I go get an Andrews? Like, can I get the?
No,
that's how I would approach it. I'm trying to use Njoku as that upgrade. Sorry.
Well, and you've got Schultz sitting on your bench too. Like Schultz is a serviceable tight end. There's a lot of question marks on who are they going to throw the ball to in Houston, especially with Brandon Cooks out of the way, and a rookie QB. Their best friend is always going to be a tight end, and Dalton Schultz can be that safety valve for. Guess what? CJ Stroud, who's also on your roster. So, I really really like this roster, and I think the one person I haven't talked about is Najee freaking Harris. That dude is about to blow up, I think. And I know I'm probably in the minority on that, but Pittsburgh finally improved their offensive line this year in the draft. And Najee's one knock has always been efficiency. But the thing to me that's always caused him to be inefficient is he's getting hit immediately because their offensive line has been hot garbage. You give him a better offensive line, you give him a better opportunity to be more efficient, and he still gets the volume that he's been getting. He's got a real chance to, I think, again, surprise people and blow some stuff up.
I totally agree on the Najee thing, and it's funny.
Yes.
The only reason I would trade Kenny Pickett is because he's got the team 3-3-0. He's got 3 stacks right now. Pickett to Najee being one of them.
Yeah.
Obviously the Burrow Higgins stack is huge. And there was one other one that was interesting. It's I guess it's Stroud.
Stroud and Schultz.
With Schultz. So,
and I think he has Tank Dell down on the bench too.
A lot of stacks. But yeah, I do like your idea of potentially selling Pickett or Lance though.
So yeah, and that's just because like I personally love Bryce Young. I think he's my QB1 from the rookie class. And then you got QB2 and CJ Stroud. No offense to Anthony Richardson, but you've got QB1 and QB2, and I think both of them can be fantasy producers for years to come. I'm not personally sold on Lance or Pickett as much, so that's why I would sell those two first.
I'd even look to sell Stafford, honestly.
Yeah. The thing with Stafford is I don't know if you'd get as much.
The one thing I will say is we talked about the team that probably needs quarterback the most any given Sunday has Cooper Kupp. The natural stack that's good. If I'm having a given Sunday, I maybe to your point, I'm looking to maybe buy Stafford cheap.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
Zach, I want to go to you because you had this team ranked number 1 overall. And just real quick, Shane, I actually agree with you on Najee Harris as well. I actually am very surprised to how low he's going in best balls and redraft right now. He's going in the 4th round.
Okay.
I can't believe that. So
Jeff, before you go to Zach, I have a confession to make. I am in because it involves 2 players we've talked about. I'm in a dynasty startup. That's actually a Devi startup. I took Najee at the 401 as my RB1, and then this part I'm not proud of. But I was doing my research. I took Jimmy Garoppolo as my QB1, and the reason I am okay with Jimmy Garoppolo, even as your QB2, is if he's played at least 10 games, he's been at least QB 25.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely serviceable. As a Niners fan, he's definitely a player that when he's healthy, he's actually pretty good. But healthy is the key word.
In theory, he's got the best receiver he's ever thrown to in Devontae Adams. So
true.
He's probably if he's healthy for most of the season, he's probably hitting 500 attempts for the first time in his career as well.
Fair point. All right, Zach. Now we'll go to you. You got the team ranked number 1. Give us your thoughts real quick.
Again, I don't understand what I'm missing out on. It's these two teams back to back. I definitely would love to see this league in a couple years because these two teams are the ones that I'm going to defend wholeheartedly as the rosters I'd want the most. Just having that many QBs, I love it. Get greedy. A super flex league, I love hoarding, especially young players, the guys with upside, especially when I don't have to depend on those. I really love having rookies that I'm excited about, but I also don't need to turn to for immediate production. That's what he's got here with this kind of setup. Also, the running backs, I really think there's a lot of great production there right now. I don't think there needs to really be any work done. I think David Montgomery is still going to be the primary workhorse there this year in Detroit. J.K. Dobbins, we'll see. Not really a fan of the Baltimore running back room, but still relative. That's his running back 4. So I like Dobbins in that situation. With the wide receivers, don't love them as much, but there's enough excitement. There's enough youth there. My only concern is the tight end, but I really don't see that being hard to address whatsoever. I really like this team, and I'd feel great about a roster like this for a long time to come because you can really kind of address any need that you want or you feel that needs to be addressed at any point in time, and you have the assets to do so without really putting yourself in a hole. Yeah, pick one of your 7. Yeah, I would personally go in order of probably Ritter as the first one to try and shop, and then Lance, and then Pickett. Because to me, I'd rather depend on. I trust Stafford more this year than I would Young or Stroud. At least in the first couple weeks, I'd like to see a couple weeks of the rookies doing something. But yeah, otherwise, the moment I see a few weeks of Young or Stroud, even just QB 15 type performances, Stafford's gone.
Yeah,
that's what I'd recommend there.
Good point.
Zach, the only reason I didn't go Ritter is because I've been a part of the Desmond Ritter fan club for like 3 years. Me and Joel Verzosa.
I didn't know. I didn't even know he had a fan club.
3 years. So back when he was at Cincinnati.
Yes, exactly. So
were you also a Zach Caleros fan?
No. Are you about to be a Mordecai fan for
no
Wisconsin?
I just really liked Ritter.
Okay.
I like Shane sticking to his guns. He followed his boy Baker Mayfield all over the whole NFL. Wherever he went.
There's a reason that any given Sunday is ranked 4 for me, and it's Baker freaking Mayfield. Okay.
All right, let's get to team number 4.
Number 4.
All right, number 4 team as high as 3 and as low as 10. So another big disparity here. It is Dave Katz and Kyle. This is your squad.
Yeah, so if I had to change any rankings, I have them at 5. I think I might actually, maybe Zach's convinced me Team 330 should probably be in the top 4. So I might knock them down a spot or 2, but I still view them in, I guess, I guess if I had one spot, wouldn't be in the top half of the league. But I'm a believer in Justin Fields, and so I suppose Justin Fields, Kyler Murray QB room. If Murray can return to health, that's incredible, and I think that might have. I was thinking a lot of that upside, I think, when ranking them at 5 in particular. So I guess the one biggest knock I have for this team is the running back 1, who I really can't identify right now. It might be Alexander Madison, but we'll have to wait to see what the Vikings do at running back room. It might be Damian Pierce. I guess the Pierce Singletary handcuff is some nice insurance, but for a guy who loves running backs as much as me, that's I think the biggest weakness. And deep at running back, but really needing that true difference maker at running back, I think is what's lacking. But a lot of young receivers, which is good currency. I actually my tight end 3 in Dynasty in TJ Hawkinson. So again, slight premium, but still enough of a difference maker that it gives you the positional advantage, even if there's no premium. So I guess there's some things about this team I really like. Normally a team with Kyler Murray, you'd have to be sure to be like really conscious of youth and the potential to need to rebuild. But Justin Fields, Jared Goff as like the divisional stack as well could work for some games. Like that's serviceable enough to get you through the season. There's not another starter. So, hey, maybe that's the team that goes to all about TDs and trades for one, team 330 and trades for one of those depth quarterbacks in case they need a third option. I wonder if Clayton Tune will get starts over Murray. Maybe they have the third starter, but yeah. So I think RB1 and QB depth, which
tanking for Caleb.
Yeah. The thing that stood out with this team, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, is yes, he doesn't have a true RB1, but he's got a whole lot of darts. You know what I mean? He's got a whole lot of darts, guys that could potentially pop. I mean, Chase Brown, does he eventually replace Joe Mixon? We talked about Alexander Madison. Samaje Perine, if Javonte Williams is not ready to go, looked really good last year. Devin Achane is sort of a wild card in Miami. Sean Tucker is an undrafted free agent, in Tampa. If Rashad White falls flat, he could be something. So he has a lot of good darts there that potentially, if one of them can pop, he's gonna be okay.
Speaking of Rashad Penny, I mean, he
already
might get the
hurt?
most carries with the Eagles. I don't think that's the likeliest scenario, but we really don't know how that running back room's. I guess he's got, other than Swift, he's got 2 of the top 3 there because he's got Gainwell as well.
So
Kyle,
Shane,
it's not going to matter if Rashad Penny gets a majority of the carries because he'll be hurt in 4 games.
Hey,
Yeah,
I mean, we don't know.
I always say you're injury prone until you're not. So if he stays healthy, he could actually be pretty decent.
This is by far the best offensive line he's been behind. So maybe this is the team that can help him stay healthy.
True.
I guess. So how is this 10th for you though, Shane?
I was that's the same question.
Yeah, that's what I'm
great
wondering
question.
right now.
So I'd probably let my football evaluation get in the way of my fantasy evaluation, so I'm not the biggest believer in Fields. And then the RB room, Kyle kind of hit on it. He doesn't really have that stud RB1. Like you guys said, he's got a couple of darts that can potentially hit there, but it's not necessarily guys that I'm trusting. And at least for this year, he's going to have to wait half the year roughly for Kyler to come back and get back to that performance level. So he's going to have to rely on Jared Goff. Now, Jared Goff has plenty of weapons, and I think he'll be serviceable as your QB2. But then what happens if the Cardinals are as bad as they should be without Kyler? Kyler comes back, and then maybe they shut him down because it's like, what's the point?
What's the point?
Might as well try and get him fully healthy. And
then you're maybe getting Clayton Tune starts, to be honest.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think we need to put some respect on my boy Jared Goff's name too, though. I mean, he was QB10 last year, I believe, in most formats. He wasn't a slouch, and there was definitely suspensions and injuries. Yeah,
it's
so
not
I mean,
like he's done that. Like, I think it's his 3rd top 10 finish as quarterback, so it's not like it's out of the blue nowhere. Like, he's shown he's capable to.
He's not a sexy asset. Don't get me wrong.
No.
I understand. I have Jared Goff in a lot of leagues, but that's a guy I trust this year as well. I don't look at him as my league winner, but I look at him as a guy that's going to.
I think you muted yourself, Zach.
So he looks at it, but he doesn't speak at it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Sorry to complete the pun there.
And then the other thing is wide receiver depth. I feel like after your starting lineup, this team really lacks it. You've got a shot at some value in Darnell Mooney, I think. But Tyquan Thornton's a question mark. Darius Slayton, despite him being an Auburn guy and me loving him, he can't catch to save his life. And Robert Woods is getting over the hill from a wide receiver standpoint.
But I love Dalton Kincaid there too, and I think Musgrave's great. I think you could flip Hawkinson if you wanted to go younger. Like, to me, I'm moving TJ. Hey, Dalton's the man now.
Because I was almost thinking the opposite. Enough people think like you about Dalton Kincaid based on dynasty rankings. I think I'm flipping Kincaid.
I am so with you there, Kyle. Michael Myers tight end 1, baby. Let's go.
Oh, I mean, I don't think it's that. I just don't believe in rookie tight ends. And it seems like enough people believe in Kincaid that there's a market for it. But honestly, Zach, I think neither option is awful. If Dave Katz believes in Kincaid so much, I guess I agree. Like, selling Hawkinson to get that QB depth, that might be the better way to get a better quarterback.
Depending on how you view Kincaid is the important part there. Because if you're not as high on Kincaid as I am, then I would, probably ride TJ out and sell on the hype of Kincaid. However, I have TJ as my tight end 4, and I have Kincaid as my tight end 6 currently. Wow. So that's where, to me, I don't see much of a difference there, and I'd rather just sell the guy that's, a couple of years older. It's
funny because I think I've got Kincaid at 7 or 8. Okay. But I also think there's a massive gap between 6 and 7. So,
I think there's a big gap, but I also think Kincaid's it's only a 1-year gap because I expect Kincaid to be higher than him.
That's true. I think that's the prognostication is like a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of draft experts and people who scout do think he has the potential to be that next big difference maker. Again, though, I'm the Kyle Pitts hater, so like you could tell me all, and like I've been burnt by Noah Fant, and frankly, I mean TJ Hawkinson's kind of the only one of those guys we've really hyped. OJ Howard, anybody? No offense, Jamie, but David Njoku has not lived up to what he was expected to be, right? Like a lot of those guys,
5 years to finally hit that mark.
A lot of those guys like seem to fail to hit it. And again, Hawkinson seems to be the only one who has, and that's maybe why I'm hesitant, because he's proven that he is that difference maker. Yeah. Maybe not to the Kelsey level, but certainly, I mean, he and Andrews were basically identical points per game last year. And some people still have Andrews as the tight end 1 in Dynasty. I think at some points this offseason, Hawkinson was I think before the draft, before they took Addison and kind of added competition, he was my tight end 2 in Dynasty. So
yep.
I looked at this roster as a lot of youth. I mean, I had it right in the middle of the pack at 4 for me. There's a lot of pieces I like. However, I don't really view it in that top tier. I think, there's a lot of options. There's a lot of hope, but there's not really a lot of security. There's not a lot of safety where you can be confident going into the year. And that's why.
All right. So we got to move on to the next team here. But I wanted to say one last thing that someone had mentioned that I want to talk about this team. And there's not the big difference maker. I think Shane may have said it. He doesn't have that stud. He's got guys that have the potential to be the stud, like Chris Olave, I love. Drake London, I like. Even Jerry Jeudy, I'm really high on. But he doesn't have that one guy. They're all just, good guys. They're all tier 2 guys. Yep. He doesn't have any of those tier 1s yet, I don't believe. So I think that kind of holds him back a little bit.
Well, and to kind of put a bow on it, it's the same thing we've talked about the whole PLP. Someone's got to be 10, and this 10 happened to be 10 for me. But because of the balance of this league, I'm not going to be pressed for someone ranking them higher than me because this team is still good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and you mentioned it, like your evaluation of Fields, I think looms large there, right?
Yeah.
And when I saw your ranking, my first instinct, Shane isn't a huge believer in Fields, I don't think. And I think that was the, but all to say, I don't love the Fields Khalil Herbert stack. So maybe Kincaid and Herbert throw in another piece, and that's how you get an RB upgrade as a better RB1 than anything you have. I know I've got Cam Akers ranked higher than a lot, so I don't know if he's an attainable target. I think he'd be better than anything that's here as an RB1. I don't know if I'm necessarily comfortable in saying that's how I want to build dynasty teams with Cam Akers as the RB1, but for this team where that is the biggest question mark, that's at least a start, I think.
Fair point. All right, let's get to number 3.
Number 3.
Number 3 team ranked as high as 1 and as low as 8, and it is TK Wood. And Zach, this is your team.
This is a team that, it's funny I got assigned because, I really wasn't as high as someone like Kyle on this one. I really, I'm glad we have such polar opposite views on a lot of these teams so we can give, conflicting feelings. With a one like this, though, this is win now all the way. This is not a team, I'd really be signing up for whatsoever. I usually like more balance in regards to production. And, in regards to win now, there's a lot to be excited about with this. My concern, though, is it's so top heavy where you really even are getting limited in regards to who you're turning to for production by the bottom part of your starting lineup. It doesn't even happen on your bench. It's that tail end of that starting lineup where we're really getting questionable. Who's going to ever complain about CMC, Barkley, and Joe Mixon as your like a 3-headed monster running back core? That's great. I love Lamar and Kirk Cousins this year, but yeah, what's up, Shane?
Oh, I was just gonna say who would complain about that, and that'd be me, but that's because I hate Joe Mixon.
I think you wouldn't complain about it compared to that team that has Dalvin Cook and Isaiah Pacheco. Though
that's fair. I would agree with that.
Or Dameon Pierce and Khalil Herbert.
I totally agree.
And that's my point because I have conflicting feelings on Joe Mixon as well. But no, there's potential here. You have, I believe you have 4 third-round picks and only 2 seconds, over the course of the next 3 years. So you obviously you traded away 1 second. I was trying to figure out what that trade had to have been. Because as I was looking at this roster, I just didn't really see a lot of guys on your bench that were guys that I would see you trying to acquire via trade. So I'm assuming that you probably used it in a package to get one of those running backs or something.
Well, I wonder how like they were saying, this draft, like this auction just happened and the rookie draft just happened. If the trade happened during either of those drafts, did they sell future picks for auction money? Which again, I'm a big proponent of.
Because I love, you look at the top part of the starting lineup. I love it, and then it just, it kills my vibe so much when I see Rondale Moore and Alan Lazard, and that's just, I like the excitement or the hope for both of those guys this year, but that is a dangerous game to be playing when you're depending on any sort of production in your starting lineup with names like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because you're right that the end of that roster there gets a little shaky. It's those first like 4 guys there: Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Justin Jefferson. That really, this is the opposite of the team we just talked about, where that team has all the tier 2 guys. This guy's got 4 tier 1 guys, and then a bunch of other guys kind of fill in the holes.
I would say I could see this team winning this year if Rondale Moore and Alan Lazard can both be guys that produce, an average of 8 to 10 a week. If they can keep him afloat, where they're not just complete duds from time to time, the heavy hitters, those big names on this lineup, should be able to carry the load. It's just about, are you getting enough to just get by with the bottom part of that starting lineup?
This roster reminds me of an NBA team, super team, where they get those 3 stars, in this case 4 stars, and then it's a bunch of role players, and that's kind of what he's got on his bottom of his roster here, is the role players. But
I like to think that Doc from Going for Two, this would be his lineup. I thought you
were saying Doc Rivers. He is not a super team though.
Doc from Going for Two. I think this would be his roster, because he loves those veteran squads.
He does. He likes to win now. He's all about winning now, for sure.
Yep. No, I could see that for sure. This team's a winner for me. I rank them at number 1, and I think the lack of depth I felt was very pressing in these top 3 teams. Like, I felt like it was kind of an issue they were all suffering from. So then it just came down to, like, okay, who had the better elite assets? And I guess the tantalizing view of Jefferson and McCaffrey was enough to kind of push it over the edge for me. The team we have ranked 1, I like this running back, especially McCaffrey Barkley, like that RB duo. I would say that's the best RB duo in the league. I don't think anyone has anything. Maybe you argue Bijan and Jacobs, but I would probably still take this McCaffrey Barkley duo, frankly.
At least for 2023, for sure.
And I'm actually kind of getting higher on Darren Waller. I believe I raised him back to my RB7 in Dynasty. He's that.
He's a running back now?
Or sorry, tight end. I love running back so much. I think everyone's a running back, apparently. No, good. Yeah. Shane always has your back. He always catches everything. And Darren Waller catches everything too. I think he's going to be the leading receiver for the Giants this year, assuming he stays healthy. I would imagine he's the guy that's proven he can earn that type of target share before. And really that doesn't exist anywhere else on this Giants receiving core. So massive volume there. I think he's that first tight end I'd have right after the difference making tier, and he has the chance to re-enter. So I like that from a starting lineup standpoint. Again, maybe Moore or Lazard. There might still be a lot of targets there, though. I guess for Lazard, we're hoping for efficiency more than anything. But for Rondale Moore, he might be the second target on that team, and that might be worth a lot. So I guess what it came down to when I was directly comparing a lot of the starting lineups among the top 3, maybe it's the Justin Jefferson shine, but Jefferson and McCaffrey, that's enough for me. I want that team that has those 2 guys. That's potentially the RB1 and the wide receiver 1 this year.
All right. Let's get to number 2.
Number 2.
Number 2 team is the one team I think in this league that didn't have a huge disparity. If we take out the computer teams, it's basically highest is 2 and lowest is 3 from the human rankers. KTC and FF ranker, the 2 computer rankers, had him at 5, but we had him basically as a 3 or a 2, and that is Happy Endings Casino. And Shane, this is your squad here.
Yeah, so I absolutely love Dak Prescott and Nick Chubb as your first 2 people on the roster, and then you've got Garrett Wilson, who I think is going to blow up. Now, you'll notice that I skipped over Breece Hall. Now, I've got concerns on Breece Hall for early in the season, and there are people that are talking about him coming back early. But if you pay attention to anybody that matters, and the one person I'm talking about is Stephania Bell, she will tell you that anybody that is coming off an ACL, it will take them 9 months to get back to playing. That's just getting on the field. It typically takes a year, so 12 months, to actually get back to full performance level. And for me and Breece Hall, that's still about midway through the season. So that's my concern with him. But he still fits in really, really nicely with this roster. You've also got DK Metcalf, who I think is just slowly inching towards being that alpha number one receiver. But it's weird in Seattle. There will be weeks where DK goes off and Lockett goes off, and now they've got JSN. So, like, how is that going to work in? But I still love DK. Dallas Goedert is, I talked about it on my show. Shameless plug. It's coming out probably Monday. We talked about NFC East. Dallas Goedert is a guy we talked about a lot, where he should and could be considered in that top 5 or 6 tight end discussion. So you're covered there. Amari Cooper, fantastic. Deontay Johnson is being slept on. He literally can go nowhere but up when it comes to his touchdown games. And he's one of, I think, 4 players in the last 3 seasons to have 140 targets plus in each season. Rachaad White can easily take over that Tampa Bay backfield. And there's not much. I mean, there's Zach Evans for competition. They're talking to Kareem Hunt, but for right now, it's Rachaad White's backfield. Deshaun Watson, I'm just going to skip over him because if you've listened to a PLB before,
I was going to say that it was funny that Jeff assigned you the Watson team, and I also find it hilarious that you called Zach Evans Sean Tucker because I mix them up all the time.
They're the same person. They're the same freaking person. But Zach Evans is in LA. Sean Tucker's in Tampa. I meant, right? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
You got it right.
You got it right there.
But yeah, I'm going to skip over to Deshaun Watson. The talent is there, but I think he's a despicable human being, and I hope he chokes on in the middle of a massage, if you get what I'm saying. Jordan Love, I think, has a lot of potential. Mac Jones, he's a serviceable QB2, so you've got some depth there. You do actually have Zach Evans. You've also got so again, Kyle doesn't like handcuffing his running backs. I like that you have Izzy Abanikanda, and yeah, that didn't come out right.
There are situations you want to handcuff. This seems like it's one because
exactly.
If Breece Hall is slow to come back, you've got that insurance. Now, maybe it's Michael Carter and Zonovan Knight. Like there's risk there, but like take a shot, right? Like that makes this is a team that makes sense to roster Abanikanda. I'll agree there.
This roster was the one that I viewed as the most balanced from position to position in regards to depth and in starting lineup. This was the one because I graded each position for each team, and they were either an 8 or a 9 for me in every spot. This is a spot that I'd feel really comfortable having this roster, and you can kind of go any way at any time. You're ready for whatever happens, and I think that's a good job for you or by you on that auction draft to put yourself in the spot.
Absolutely.
I would say all the top 3 teams, I considered all of them as number 1 at different times, and I ultimately landed on the team we just talked about. But I guess speaking of number 1, is that where we're going next, or did I transition too early?
Hold on.
I did. I'm sorry.
I have 2 players left to talk about, and they're sleeper players for this roster at the wide receiver position. It's Paris Campbell and Terrace Marshall Jr. I think both of those have the potential to even become the wide receiver 1 on their team this year, especially Terrace Marshall Jr. They drafted Jonathan Mingo. They've got Adam Thielen. They brought in DJ Chark. There's a lot of question marks in that wide receiver room. I'm in Carolina. Nobody really knows what's going on. But I really think Terrace Marshall has the opportunity to still take over that wide receiver room. And same with Paris Campbell. Same thing. There's a lot of question marks. Sterling Shepard's 30 years old and can't stay on the goddamn field. Jalen Hyatt is a rookie that he's had 1 year of production at Tennessee. Darius Slayton has bricks for hands. And then you've got Darren Waller, who is a phenomenal tight end, but also can't stay on the field. So there's a really clear path for Paris Campbell. If he can stay on the field, that's his biggest problem too.
I think it's important to emphasize as well that Jameson Williams is just chilling on this bench right now.
Absolutely.
He's the guy that I absolutely love. Obviously, there's some question marks right now for obvious reasons, but he's just stashed away down there. That's going to be your wide receiver 3 in my books eventually. I love that core for the long-term future of DK, Garrett Wilson, and Jameson. Love that.
It's
But
fire.
I
And it's
also
just-
really think an underrated part is the Abenaconda.
Yeah.
Having him
You
along
said it
with
much
Brees
better than I
Hall,
did.
because I think that if there are any potential concerns with Brees Hall and that injury as he's coming back, it's going right to him, and that's where I think having both of them together, that's a great handcuff to have. I like having Abenaconda. I can never say it right. But I've been trying to stash them in almost all my leagues, even if I don't have Brees Hall. So
Well, I've been
having them
saying that
together,
Abanikanda. Am I saying it wrong?
That's how I've been saying it. So
Yeah.
You're
I'm
saying
just
it
gonna
like
say
you're from
I'm gonna say
Alabama.
Conda.
Roll
I'm gonna
Tide.
say Conda like Anaconda. Even
well, I
if
think
I'm
it's
wrong.
also because it's tough. Like you don't know if the emphasis is on the right syllable, and if it's not, you sound like an idiot, like I just did.
Yeah. Like the all I know is whenever I see his name, I just think of the Sir Mix-a-Lot baby guy. Just
You see,
instead of
I
my
think of
instead of my Anaconda don't want none. Just insert
Oh.
his name.
yeah.
There you go.
I'm Canadian. I think of Angela Anaconda, the TV show. So
Okay, or Wakanda, like Shane said, but fuck Marvel. I mean, what?
One thing I want to just say real quick on a guy that Shane kind of talked about, that we talked about on my show on Wednesday, is Deontay Johnson. I had him as my bounce back candidate this year. He did something that's very, very difficult to do. He had 147 targets and 0 touchdowns. I went and looked at the last 3 years and took players that had at least 140 targets or more and figured out what their average touchdown was, and it was 7, and he had 0. It's very, very hard to do. I can't see him repeating that. He will have some touchdowns this year. There will be some regression to the mean.
He
so
has to have positive touchdown regression.
I think for his career, he definitely should, because he's never had 0 touchdowns in a career and he's had all those targets. But like the problem with the regression to the mean is we've only seen one season of Kenny Pickett. Like what is the mean for him? What is the average? I think that's the scary part, because Trevor Lawrence had an awful rookie season and he bounced back to be.
But that's because
decent.
of Urban Meyer.
It is. And Kenny Pickett's season was even worse than Lawrence's, and that's the problem. And I think we all think Kenny Pickett isn't as good as Lawrence. So all to say, like we saw Lawrence go from a 2% touchdown rate as a rookie to 4.3%.
Yeah.
I think we can expect like Kenny Pickett was 1.8%. Like, and I went back to 2011 because I was trying to, I've got a touchdown projection project that I did last year. I'm going to do again. And just wanted to see, like, what can we expect for the rookie quarterbacks? Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and frankly, Jordan Love and Kenny Pickett, because especially Jordan Love, he's only started one game in his NFL career. As much as Zach, it's funny. Like, I went back and I was shocked he only started one game, right? Because we're both Packers fans. I feel like we've seen not a lot of him, but enough of him to think he had more than one start, right? But no, just the one start. Pickett only had 12. So neither has had a full rookie season worth of starts. So you can kind of consider them as rookies. Anyway, going back to 2011, every rookie quarterback that started at least 9 games in their rookie season, that 1.8% touchdown rate was the worst out of all of them.
Ooh.
So like there's like just like Johnson, though, there's literally nowhere to go but up for Pickett. I expect he's going to, increase. But like, again, Lawrence went from 2% to 4.3%. So that was more than double. I think expecting Kenny Pickett to double his touchdown rate to like a 3.6%, that would be kind of like that's like right in the average for those first round rookie quarterbacks. So I think we can expect him to at least be average. Deontay should at least get 4 or 5 touchdowns.
Yeah,
if that's the
agreed.
case.
Agreed.
That was a really long-winded way to say that.
All right, now we can transition to the number 1 team here. If you haven't figured it out already,
Number one.
the number 1 team, it was ranked as high as 1, obviously, and as low as 5, actually. And it is Beast Mode's Duck Boat. And Kyle, you have this team.
Well, I think the first reason they're number 1 is because 2 members of this panel did rank them at 1. I think that's kind of what elevated them in those initial rankings. So Jeff and Shane had them at number 1. I am a little confused, though, because I've watched Beast Wars a ton, and Beast Mode, Maximize. I don't ever remember a duck in that show, so I'm confused on the Beast Mode duck, but Duck Boat. I know there were a couple of water transformers, but anyway, I'll transform this conversation back to fantasy. Mahomes and Lawrence, man, what a great QB combo, and then basically no QB3. Now Marcus Mariota, considering the offense he's in and his skill set, which at this point he's a better runner than thrower, if he were to ever start for her, like he might be the most valuable backup quarterback to have, simply because of like his role would excel so much for fantasy if he ever took over. But he is still just a backup quarterback that's not getting in unless of an injury. Like he's like Jalen Hurts isn't suddenly getting benched. Like there's no upside of that. Whereas, I would rank other backup quarterbacks higher because like a Desmond Ridder or a Jacoby Brissett, because like those guys can get there through injury as well, but the guys in front of them might also get benched. So there's more ways to get there. Essentially, though, I think the reason I didn't put them one is because of that. It's like, okay, Mahomes, Lawrence is nice, but then there's no QB behind them. And then, relative to the last two teams we talked about, Nick Chubb, Breece Hall, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, I think Etienne and Swift is kind of a letdown at running back. Now, I'm a little lower on Etienne than consensus.
I will fight you, Kyle.
Well, here's one. I'd much easily rather have Ken Walker than Travis Etienne right now.
I'll fight you. We'll do it later, but I'll fight you.
Okay. Now, it's funny because that was the thing I was talking about with TK Wood, right? Like, okay, Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, Darren Waller, or Patrick Mahomes, Travis Etienne, Mark Andrews. And maybe I like running backs too much, and McCaffrey and Barkley. That's why I'll put them 1, and I had Beast Mode team at 2. I should actually talk about what the team needs. But yeah, that trio of like the potential of having the QB1, wide receiver 1, and tight end 1 is great. If they could ever upgrade the RB1 from Etienne to a better running back, and to be fair, there aren't necessarily a ton of guys that I view as better, but I think the ones I do view are clear upgrades in terms of fantasy points production. Like, to me, I want to get CMC on this team. I want to get Austin Eckler. Can Beast Mode find a way to really go Beast Mode and have like the number 1 player at all 4 positions? That might be what puts it over the top for me. So I think I was talking about something earlier, and I'll talk about that's the big moves to make, but there's, I think, some small back end moves to make. And one of them would be just increasing running back depth, to be honest. And I know maybe there's a couple, I think looks like 3 empty roster spots, or at least 2. But I also think there's maybe some roster clogger receivers. I think there's too many receivers on this team, frankly. Like, the starting lineup's great. Maybe Chase and Boyd on the same team without Joe Burrow. I love Boyd, so I don't hate it. But I think, to me, Quez Watkins and Juwan Jennings, I think those, I would cut both of them to get any running back that's on any RB on a 53, as Scott always says.
Fair enough. Yeah, I like that. And I had him at 1 because, in Superflex, there's a way to cover up some warts. And that's having Patrick Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence. When you have those quarterbacks, it definitely can pull your team, in the right direction, no matter what kind of holes you have with those two guys. Now, I know Zach is chomping at the bit over here. A peek behind the scenes, we got a private chat to the side here, and he's now mentioned a couple times that he wants to go on next because he had this team at number 5. So Zach, go ahead and talk about this team.
You can put a Band-Aid over a scratch. You can't put it over something you need to, get stitched up. And I don't, Patrick Mahomes, the top end talent, Mahomes, Lawrence, Chase, and Andrews. I like Etienne as well, but we're going to leave him out of this. Those top 4, those big names, the guys I have as the number 1s in their positions, are masking a roster that I think is a fraud otherwise. Because
fraud.
Oh, yeah. If for number 1 overall, it's a good team, but not what I would expect to be our number 1 spot. I'm sorry, but when you get the bottom end of the starting lineup is Jacoby Myers, Zay Jones, and Tyler Boyd, that's not good, especially with some of the elite guys. Yeah, they'll overproduce. They'll give you some great points, and you'll have the advantage there. But I'm struggling to really see how you're going to win matchups week after week with some of these other weapons that teams have in their flex spots. They should be able to hold their own enough against your big boys, and at that point they'll be able to make up ground and beat you with those more vulnerable spots. And I know Kyle was talking about trading for assets, trying to upgrade at running back from maybe an Etienne to a CMC or that kind of thing, or some back end moves. I guess to me, I just don't know how or with what. You don't have your first this year. And, Zeke is your RB3 right now. I'm not too optimistic you have a lot to play with. And unless you really want to move off of a Jamar, a Mark, or a Patrick, downgrade a little bit and get more on your bench, I'm just not as optimistic. Yeah,
I guess it's funny because
so negative.
Your talk of wide receiver depth is probably accurate, even though I said they have too many wide receivers on the team. And I think you're coming from a points perspective, right? And I think some of these receivers carry enough value that's maybe how you make those upgrades. Can you sell a George Pickens? Can you sell a Jonathan Mingo?
Yeah, but I guess my concern is it's like the Mingo. I feel like that's going to have to be packaged to get something that's relatively.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what you add to Etienne for that elite running back, and maybe another throw-in receiver back that might score similar to Mingo, but doesn't carry the value because he's not a rookie. Or same with Pickens, like someone who can be comparable to his production, but not nearly where he's valued.
But that's where I like my focus more. If I have this roster, is how can I upgrade my Myers, Jones, Boyd area of my flex. If I can upgrade there, I'm less worried about Etienne. I'm more worried about the back end flex spots, and that's where I might go for some of those Adam Thielen, Mike Evans. Some of these just like more flyer veteran guys that you don't have to necessarily pay a lot for, and you might be able to afford at a more reasonable price where you don't have to downgrade from your elite guys.
That is true. That's a good way to target that. Again, the aging running backs too, but certainly aging wide receivers are kind of especially the ones that have produced are good. But just talking of past production, like all three of those guys, Myers, Jones, and Boyd, I think two of them last year, they've shown the ability to get 100 targets in a season. So these aren't scrubs in terms of production. Like they will give you points. I especially love the Zay Jones, Trevor Lawrence stack. Zay Jones had 121 targets in that offense last year.
But we also didn't have Calvin Ridley coming in.
Bingo.
But targets are earned. So Calvin Ridley coming in they're losing Marvin Jones. So that's 89 targets. That's just appearing out of nowhere as well.
Parker Washington as well.
I like that call, Zach.
A sixth round. I don't mind Parker Washington, but a sixth round receiver shouldn't stand in the way of a guy that earned 121 targets last year. Like that's not going away. Like Zay Jones didn't suddenly become less talented because Calvin Ridley's there.
I guess I just don't view him as like a 70 to 80 target guy. There is value there.
He was 100. He had 100 target season in Buffalo though, so this isn't kind of out of nowhere unprecedented. He's a second round pick, super talented.
I think I'm trying to temper the expectations as well because I see what you're saying. I think Zay Jones there is that route there. He's definitely a guy worth having.
I temper expectations on Ridley to think he's coming in and commanding 120 targets, 130 targets like everyone's expecting. He might be the guy he might get the 89 targets that Marvin Jones had, and Kirk and Zay Jones combined for like 250 targets between the two of them. Like that's a lot of passes that Lawrence has shown to trust those guys, and I mean they won doing it. So I think I like Zay Jones as a potentially even wide receiver too, if you can, like actual wide receiver too, not Pickens.
So Kyle, I have to combat your Zay Jones. I hear and get what you're saying. I'm also like a huge Calvin Ridley truther. He has what years? What? Oh my God. Hold on.
He has 100 target season, I believe.
He has 200 target seasons.
Oh, two.
2018 in Buffalo and then 2022 with Jackson.
Oh, Zay Jones. Yeah. For sure.
And then he has a 70 target season in Vegas and a 74 target season in Buffalo. His other three seasons are 18, 27, and 20.
Are those full season? How many games did he play in those seasons, though?
A total of 31, if my math is correct. He had 16 in 2020 with Vegas, 10 in Oakland, and then 5 in Buffalo.
No, it was Oakland, yeah.
Mine was less so to discredit Zay. It's more so a sum of
that Buffalo Oakland season is half though. That's a 45 target season.
I look at it as more of a I like Parker, so I think he'll get 20 or 30. I like Ridley, and I think he's taking more. But I just think there's a lot of guys that I like in that offense that I expect to be fed, and that's where I think it's not Ridley getting all of it. It's not awesome for Ridley. I think it's kind of to everyone's detriment. That's what I'm trying to get at.
I will say Tyler Boyd is currently my most rostered player in Dynasty, but I would say try and trade him just because of the Chase and Boyd in the lineup at the same time. Again, if I had Joe Burrow on my team, I might like that more, but that would be just intrinsically, can you sell Boyd to get anything of value? Maybe that's how you recoup picks, or that's, he's a bit on the older side, but like Zach was saying, could you get someone even older than Boyd, and someone will view that, okay, I'm getting a younger player in Boyd. It's an ascending, exciting offense. So that might be, of those receivers, I agree, that might be the one to sell.
And I think to wrap, because this team's in a fairly great spot here. So, I would be looking at those 24, those 2 seconds, and then that third, I'd be trying to use that, to help me win now, to help me make that push for this year. And I think that's why you guys put this team at number 1, is just because, hey, you're ready to go right now. Just a move or 2 away, and you can win the damn thing.
And having the extra second is nice. Even without their first, they still have 3 picks to use.
Absolutely. And just to go back to the Zay Jones, Calvin Ridley thing, I have a soft spot in my heart for Zay Jones because I had him in my DraftKings lineup, the 3 touchdown game that he had, and I won a boatload of money that week. So there's a soft spot for Zay Jones. And the one thing I'll say about Calvin Ridley and Ryan on my show is he's not a fan of Calvin Ridley. He thinks he's going to struggle this year. First of all, he's 28.
Stupid.
He's 28 years old, which you wouldn't think. He doesn't seem that old, but he's 28, and he's now not played almost 2 years of football that he's been out. To think that he's just going to come in and be the man in an offense that already had the man with Christian Kirk and a good Robin to his Batman with Zay Jones. It's hard for me to see Ridley coming in and being an immediate impact. Maybe down the road, end of the season, maybe next year, but it is hard for me to see where he fits into this offense.
Jeff, I'm 28 and I'm in my prime, so I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
I don't know if we would use.
But you haven't taken a 2-year absence from podcasting now. You've just still been going strong the whole time.
That's a very fair point.
We just saw Deshaun Watson, that extended absence. It seemed to clearly affect him because he was viewed as a potential like top 2, top 3 quarterback in the NFL. Like as good as we think Ridley is, I don't think we ever thought he was the 3rd best receiver in the NFL. So
I did.
You know what? His 2020 season was incredible. To be fair,
yeah.
he was a top 5 receiver I think in Dynasty. So maybe, but that one isolated time also seems very short and fleeting. So yeah, with the rest, I am concerned. Which again, back to why I had that one team ranked so low is because their wide receiver 2 was Ridley, and it's I don't love that.
Fair enough.
Wait. Shane, you're 28.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought you were old. All right. Sorry. I just need to.
It's because I've got 3 kids and a receding hairline. That's why.
Thank you. That's what it was. Yeah. All right.
All right. Let's move on to the last.
Oh, I thought it's because you thought he was so mature.
Handsome. Really? Handsome was the word I was thinking. But yeah.
Thank you. That's the nicest thing. Man, I need to hang out with you guys more often.
All right. Let's move to the last segment here. So we're gonna pick some dark horses here. For 2023, some teams, and this is actually going to be a pretty easy exercise because a lot of these teams I think can all pretty much win. But as far as the way we have them ranked here, Shane, we'll go to you first. Who is your dark horse team that could win it all this year?
Jeff, I apologize for the language, but fuck it, I'm going with Big Bravs. Big Bravs is my dark horse. Like we talked about, they have the potential QB1 in Jalen Hurts. They have the potential RB1 in Jonathan Taylor. They have a top 3 wide receiver in Stephon Diggs. I believe in Sam Howell and the Jahan Dotson stack. And remind me who their tight end is real fast. Cole Kmet. I love Cole Kmet. There's a world where injuries happen and this team surprises a lot of people and competes. And hell, I believe in Sam Howell. So that's my dark horse.
Fair enough. Zach, let's go to you for your dark horse.
I don't want to go with one of my number 1 or 2 teams that I know is different than everyone else. I feel like that's kind of the easy way to go. So I'm going to go for someone here that, we're kind of all collectively lower on. And that's going to be Mancino. That's Josh Allen, Russell Wilson. I see this year there's really definitely a potential there with Sean Payton coming in. Who knows? Maybe Russell Wilson can be a productive quarterback again. I'm not going to put too many eggs in that basket, but who knows? Maybe you're smoking some of that Colorado weed and you're believing in that. But otherwise, I like the running backs. I like the wide receivers. I do see some potential there. It's just, is Jamar Gibbs going to get the workload? Is someone like Cortland Sutton really going to be that productive wide receiver that we hope he can be? But yeah, that's my guy. What about you guys?
We'll go to you, Kyle.
Well, that Zach's Colorado weed joke made me sick as a puppy. But yeah, sick puppy. I think in a sense, is very set up to be like that dark horse wild card team because there are 2 complete wild cards, Dalvin Cook and DeAndre Hopkins. We have no idea what teams they'll be playing for, and that's like a great definition to me of wild card dark horse because it could turn amazing, it could be awful. So who knows? We'll find out soon, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe we'll find out like a week before the season.
Fair enough. So my dark horse, Shane kind of stole my thunder because I was going to go with the Big Brobs as well at number 10. It's just amazing to me seeing a roster that has Jalen Hurts, Jonathan Taylor, even Ramondre Stevenson's a great player. We mentioned Calvin Ridley, and I'm not so high on him, but to have that team at 10 with those studs, if they have seasons like we know they can have, and things just break right, Sam Howell has a decent season, and Jahan Dotson and him have a connection, I could see this team really competing for a championship. A lot of things have to happen, but it's why you call it a dark horse. It's the potential that's there. So I will pick him as well. All right, fellas, that wraps the podcast up. For the guys that are still in the chat, I hope y'all enjoyed the show, and hopefully we will see you next year. But before we head out here, let's get these guys to give you their Twitter handle one more time and then plug what they're working on. So we'll go to you first, Shane.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeff. You can follow me on Twitter at FFShaneB. And like Jeff mentioned, I'm the host of Red Zone Redemption. That is my podcast. It's going to be a dynasty-focused podcast. So check it out. I'm in the middle of my divisional preview series. And then obviously the big thing that I always love to plug is Polly's Playoff. It is a tournament to end Alzheimer's. You can go to pollysplayoff.com, read why I started it, and donate and sign up there. So again, pollysplayoff.com, a tournament to end Alzheimer's.
Polly's Playoff, not Polly's Pocket. You put pollypocket.com, you might get a different.
But also, if you want a good movie, Along Came Polly. That's always there.
There you go.
Yep.
All right, Kyle,
I mean, my favorite Nirvana song is Polly, so
Never heard
it. Complete the circle.
All right, Kyle.
So I'm on Twitter at Senra Says. As Jeff mentioned in the intro, I host 2 shows on the Going for 2 Live network. We've got Press Coverage and the Dynasty Gambit. Both the press coverage, they're both every 2 weeks. The press coverage will be every second Monday, Dynasty Gambit on Thursdays. So it'll be 2 weeks from now for that rotation. So my next episode of Press Coverage will be, I almost said May. We are in June. We're almost done June 26th, and then June 29th for the next episode of the Dynasty Gambit. Outside of Going for 2, I also co-host 2 podcasts for Full Press Coverage. So we've got the Full Press Fantasy Pod, which a lot of fantasy football talk, especially this time of year. It's tons of Dynasty. We talked about auction drafts here. I'm going to be doing next week's episode will be specifically about auction drafts, my auction draft strategy, how I create my auction cheat sheets. I'm going to go through that process, going to give some examples because I do have a auction draft tomorrow night, salary cap and contract league. So looking forward to that. Almost as excited I was for doing this. I just love auctions too much. It's my first love and favorite. And then I also have the Full Press Packers pod. If you like hearing about Packers stuff, I'm sure Zach does. Actually, Zach has been on that before. So appreciate Zach for that. I guess, yeah, it's a Friday on the Going for 2 network. So it just feels right to say, go Pack, go.
All right, Zach.
With that in mind, yeah, go Pack Go. Thank you, Kyle. You get it. That's for sure. Now, you can find me on Twitter at Behind the Zach. Otherwise, you can find me bounce around and Going for 2. Bounce back in over there. Otherwise, all over pickleball courts everywhere.
I like it. And Zach, you just changed your Twitter handlers recently, but have you considered Go Zach Go as a Twitter handle?
No, I do a lot of behind the back shots. So behind the Zach is more so.
Fair enough.
That's why. Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you once again for your purchase. Hopefully you enjoyed what we put on for you tonight, and hopefully you come back next year. For those that are in the chat that were not part of this league, if you want to purchase the PLP, it is goingfor2.com/PLP. And you can follow me on Twitter at Jeff Lambert77. And I have my Wednesday night show during the off season. It's the Armchair Fancy Show every week with Ryan. And then during the season, we go two times a week with the DFS version on Friday nights. So make sure you check that out. And of course, the Going for 2 Live Network, we got shows pretty much every day of the week. So definitely check us out on YouTube, on all the podcast networks. Come find us. But for Kyle, for Shane, for Zach, I'm Jeff. We'll see you all next year, hopefully.
This was extraordinary.